In this episode of Vintage Chiefs on the Red and Gold Report, we're going to be taking a look at the career of legendary Kansas City Chiefs return specialist and wide receiver, the Dante Hall. Now, Dante was a running back at Texas A&M where he eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark in his junior season, and he finished his college career with 4,707 all-purpose yards. But his senior season did not go as planned. First, it was derailed due to injury, but then he was dismissed from the Texas A&M program over a coach's power trip. Over an issue with a parking spot? Like, seriously, it was over parking in the wrong parking spot. Hall only stood at 5 feet 8 inches tall, 187 pounds. He was undersized, so even though he showed electric promise between the size, the injuries, and the parking spot fiasco, Dante dropped to the 5th round of the 2000 draft, when the Chiefs drafted him with the 153rd overall pick. Hall barely saw the field in the year 2000, but in 2001, Dick Vermeil came on to helm the Kansas City Chiefs, and things began to change for Dante. But the first change was not an easy one. Before ever meeting in person, Dick Vermeil called Dante Hall up and sent him off overseas to play in the NFL Europe League for the Scotland Claymores. It was the equivalent of getting sent back down to the minor leagues. So like any player, Dante was not happy about getting shipped off. But it was invaluable because it gave him time to change positions from being a running back to learning wide receiver. Vermeil had a plan for Dante because in his previous stint in St. Louis, Vermeil had another great kick returner in Oz Hakeem. Vermeil sat Dante down and showed him how Hakeem's combine numbers were nearly identical to Dante's, and that Vermeil had this plan to turn Dante Hall into a great return man. So when Dante became the Chiefs' full-time return man in 2002, well, the world took notice because Dante Hall embarked on the best stretch of any return man in NFL history. He started with a punt return touchdown in Week 13 against the Cardinals. Then he added 2 more returns for touchdowns against the Rams in Week 14, which I still remember being there and how just electric Arrowhead Stadium felt to this day. Then in Week 15 against the Broncos, while catching a short throw as a wide receiver, Dante snuck away from Broncos defenders on one of the most unbelievable plays I've ever seen in my life. In week 2 of 2003, the next season at Arrowhead against the Steelers, he added another return touchdown. In week 3 against the Texans, he added yet another return for a touchdown. But then, in week 4 against the Ravens, Hall brought back a 97-yard kick return for a touchdown in the fourth quarter to put the Kansas City Chiefs on top and win the game. He had 6 return touchdowns in 9 games, a historic, unprecedented stretch, but he wasn't done yet. The very next week against the Broncos in week 5, Dante had what might be the greatest punt return touchdown of all time. 7 returns, seven return touchdowns in 10 games. It had never happened in the history of the NFL. In a 13-game span from week 13 of 2002 to week 8 of 2003, Hall had 2,039 all-purpose yards and 10 touchdowns. It was absurd. To get an idea of how good that is, well, many people in the league think of Bears great Devin Hester as the greatest return man of all time. But in his best 13-game stretch, he wasn't even close to Dante, having 3 less touchdowns and nearly 500 less yards over that time period. He was so good. Dante was so good that teams just stopped kicking him the ball altogether. In fact, there is this story of an opposing coach asking Dante before the game where his mom was sitting. And after Dante answered, the opposing coach says, "Great, because that's where we're going to kick the ball today." And in 2003, Dante wasn't just a return man. He was a key part of the Chiefs' offense, which happened to be the number one offense in the league that year. In the playoffs that year, Hall was able to return another kick for a touchdown against the Peyton Manning-led Colts in the divisional round of the playoffs. It capped off an absolutely historic two-year run. Hall's 2002 and 2003 seasons were the greatest two-year stretch of any return man in league history, and they still are. And I doubt they're ever going to be duplicated in the years to come. Now, I got to attend every home game during those 2 years at Arrowhead, and I remember this weird, just insatiable feeling in the stands those 2 years. Whenever Dante went back to return a kick, it was this feeling like anything could happen. This feeling that at any moment, Dante Hall could single-handedly win the game for our Chiefs. I remember sitting in the stands literally praying that the other team would just kick him the ball. I mean, Hall had 7 combined return touchdowns with the Chiefs in 2002 and 2003 alone. Those 2 years were the greatest 2 years of any return man ever. But Hall's career was far from over. He scored another 9 touchdowns from 2004 through 2006, and his career was more than just being a dynamic return man. Dante also had 162 receptions, 1,747 yards receiving, 9 receiving touchdowns, and added 242 yards of rushing in his career. And fun fact, Dante actually scored the first touchdown of his career in October of 2002 against the Jets, not on a return, but on a 60-yard reception on offense of all things. Dante was not just a return man. He was a great Kansas City Chief. And it wasn't just his numbers that made him special. It was his style. Dante had a unique, never replicated style that earned him the nicknames of the human joystick and the X Factor. He was Barry Sanders-esque in his cuts and his movement and his just unworldly agility. He jumped, cut, moved around players as if they were just stuck in place or in slow motion. But one of the most underrated aspects of his game was that he had courage. He might have been the smallest guy on the field at any moment, but he was ready to stick it in there in any situation. But it wasn't just Dante Hall's play on the field that made him great. It was his personality that made him special. He's just an awesome guy. Seriously, go watch any interview you want of Dante Hall. He's always smiling. He just had this inner joy about him. Let me tell you this story. One year, my mom really wanted to take family pictures for our family. Like the type of pictures you send out on your Christmas card. But it was fall, and since my dad was a Chiefs coach at the time, it was during the football season. He didn't have time to drive to some waterfall or something and take family pictures. So my mom bought us all these cheesy red polo matching shirts, and she drove us down to Arrowhead Stadium. And my dad had like 10 minutes to step out of the office and take these pictures. So we're standing right in front of Arrowhead taking these cheesy family pictures when Dante Hall comes out of the stadium and he sees our family and he calls out to my dad, "Hey, Darv, what you doing?" And then Dante proceeds to stand there for like 2 straight minutes just making hilarious jokes, like roasting us, like he was on a Comedy Central special or something. He was so funny that it actually became legitimately hard for us to take pictures. And it was all in good fun because that's just Dante's personality. He's fun, he was kind, he's this joyful guy. And it wasn't just his on-field production that made Chiefs Kingdom love the guy. It was that infectious, joyful personality he had both on and off the field. And it wasn't just a personality. It was a relationship. Dante Hall had a very special relationship with head coach Dick Vermeil. Dante grew up without his father in the home, and in the pros, he really gravitated towards Dick Vermeil. Vermeil believed in Dante Hall like he was his own son. Vermeil believed in Hall before anyone else saw how great he could be in the pros. At first, that looked like Vermeil challenging the young Dante. But as Hall's career progressed, it looked like Vermeil becoming almost like a proud father, taking every moment he had to praise Dante in the media or just hug the guy. In those prime years in Dante Hall's career, I got to hang out in the Chiefs locker room and in Dick Vermeil's office after home games. And I can tell you firsthand that every ounce of that love and affection between Dick Vermeil and Dante Hall, it was all totally genuine and authentic. So, what came after Dante and his time with the Chiefs? Well, after the 2006 season, Dante was traded to the St. Louis Rams for a third and a fifth round pick. He was still very effective in 2007, but his final season was in 2008. He then retired from football with a top 5 spot in all time return yardage. By the end of his career, he had earned one first team All Pro nod, a second All Pro team nod, two Pro Bowl selections, and a first team All NFL 2000s All Decade team nod. Since his time in the league, Dante Hall has been both a radio host and an assistant high school football coach, but his most important gig is now as a father. That's the story of Kansas City Chiefs legend, Kansas City Chiefs great, Dante Hall. Thank you for watching, and if you want the best Chiefs news and updates brought to you online, make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube so you get all the videos here on the Red and Gold Report channel. Thanks for watching, and go Chiefs!